Click on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I welcome all of you to this today's session of discussion of paper 2, and my name is Rajesh. I'll be discussing some questions of polity and the questions of governance. Fine. So the people who had written this paper, कैसे लगा? So even the people who have seen the paper, how was the paper? Tough. Okay. Why it is tough? Okay, one factor, it is language. Language is complex. Anything else? Paper is lengthy. Then? More analytical. Okay. So, being more analytical, will it make the paper tougher or more scoring? Huh? It should be scoring for the people who have studied thoroughly, for the people who have done well over there, right? So any other observations? Not to the point. Okay, in which section did you feel it is not to the point? Okay, can we say it is related to the language? The way the questions have been framed. It is not very simple and direct, right? Anything else other than these observations? Any change in the trend? Change in the trend from the past few years? No? Fine. Okay. So let's see about the polity section, how the questions have been. So the total weightage, okay, let me just show you the syllabus of this polity. This is paper 2. I have taken the screenshot of this thing from the notification. Paper 2. Paper 2 talks about the first area is polity and constitution. Fine. And then we have governance. This yellow marked is polity and constitution. Green one is governance. And in between we have social justice, then IR. Okay, there are 4 sections. Can we say it is 4 sections? Okay, in the major one is you can see the polity and constitution, which talks about the Indian constitution, the functions and responsibility of the state, the union, the separation of powers, comparison of the Indian constitution with the other countries, then the parliament and the state legislature, the structure of organization of executive and judiciary, then the salient features of RPA, appointment to various constitutional posts, statutory, regulatory, various quasi-judiciary bodies. This is what is polity and constitution. Okay, we say it as core polity. Fine. And the governance topics, there are 4 governance topics which I have highlighted in green color. So the first one is government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, issues arising out of their design and implementation. Fine, this is mainly talking about the government policies. Okay, what are the different policies and interventions the government wants to do? Then the second one is development process and development industry, because this is a bit wider. Okay, first one talks about the role of government. Second one talks about in general. Okay, other than government, there are various other players who are involved. So it includes all of them. You can see NGOs, SHGs, then various groups, associations, donors, charities, institutions, and other stakeholders. Then the third topic here is related to the governance, the transparency, accountability, e-governance, and all these new things related to the governance जो अभी recently आए हैं. And the last one is role of civil services in a democracy. Okay, 4 topics of governance, and you can see there are 3 topics of social justice. Social justice related to this poverty, hunger, human resource development, then the various welfare schemes. Right, this is about the social justice. Then it is all IR, international relations. Fine, this is the syllabus. And if you can see in the entire syllabus, the most specific, okay, most specific and the area where we have more source, clear cut source is polity and constitution. Is that correct? है ना, governance के लिए it is not very clear. Even the topic given is bit wider, and also the questions which are being asked is also much wider, and sources भी ज़्यादा कुछ direct and simple source नहीं है, right? That is governance. Social justice, it's more current related, है ना? उसके लिए भी ज़्यादा कुछ मतलब direct source नहीं होते. You have to read from the current affairs, and questions can also be both direct as well as indirect. And IR is also more current related. Fine. So the more scoring section is polity and constitution. You prepare thoroughly, you can score very well. Fine. And let me show you the weightage of this polity and constitution section. So there are total 10 questions. Out of these 10 questions, there are 5 questions of 10 mark each, which is 50 marks. Then 5 questions of 15 mark each, which is 75, total 125 marks. Okay, 125. So that is half of paper 2. Fine. Half of paper 2 is in polity and constitution. You prepare thoroughly, you can score well. Fine. And governance, if we consider, governance ka hai, there are 3 questions. So 1 question of 10 mark and 2 questions of 15 mark. So total 40. So polity and governance mila ke it is total 165 marks. Fine. It is more, you can say, more of static in nature. Even the governance questions are also a bit static, not very current oriented. The welfare schemes IR questions are a bit more current oriented. Fine. So if you do this sectional analysis, you can clearly see that even though the paper 2 looks difficult, it appears difficult, but it is not very difficult. Fine. The polity and constitution के लिए तो you can read 1 book or 2 books for the maximum, है ना? लक्ष्मीकांत और जो बख्शी है. Okay, along with that you have to add some current related, current event, current analysis. So you can do it very easily. Fine. Governance के लिए it is a bit difficult portion. I'll come to that, what to do in that. So sectional analysis, if you can see, if you let's just break these polity questions into different sections. So you can clearly see that जो इस बार का questions आया है, so that belongs to different topics in the syllabus as it is. है ना? Different topics in the syllabus. Some of the topics have been asked, some of them are not. But जो भी topics दिया है, syllabus में है ना? जो भी questions पूछा है, उसका topic syllabus में है, clearly है. Can you see? The first one, do you think the Constitution of India does not accept the principle of strict separation of power, rather it is based on the principle of checks and balance. Okay, let me just show you the syllabus. Can you see? Separation of powers between the various organs. Clearly दिया है, right? Second one, Central Administrative Tribunal. उसके ऊपर जो भी questions है, can you see here? Various constitutional posts, function, responsibility of these constitutional bodies, statutory body, regulatory, quasi-judiciary bodies. दिया है, right? There is another question. Attorney General, है ना? Usually constitutional, non-constitutional bodies के ऊपर 1-2 questions होता ही है. You prepare thoroughly, you can easily answer. Last year CAG के ऊपर question आया था, है ना? So what are the methods used by this farmers organization? This is bit unconventional, but still if you talk about this policy makers and their methods of implementation, this is, you can say it's a mix of governance and polity. And it's a mix of governance and polity. Here the functioning of these various bodies, pressure groups, formal, informal associations and their role in the polity, right? दिया है, clearly दिया है. The fourth question, distribution of legislative powers. The powers, privileges, issues arising out of these parliament and state legislatures. Is it so? Yes. And then fifth one, what France can learn from India's constitution. Clearly यहाँ पर है. Comparison of Indian constitution scheme with that of other countries. Right? Last year USA के ऊपर question आया था. Right? And take this 11th one, Representation of People Act 1951. Representation of People Act. Right? Then Parliament's power to amend the constitution. Devolution of powers, Parliament, state legislature, their structure, functioning. Right? then reservation of seats, elections, है ना, local self governments, यहाँ पर है, the functioning of these executive, judiciary, ministries, governments, attorney general हो गया, individual parliamentary roles, again the parliament and state legislature. Fine. So if you can see, the polity and constitution questions are usually in the syllabus. Okay, it is not outside the syllabus, and the source is also fixed. If you have read thoroughly from the source, you can easily answer. Only thing required was that thoda sa patience and a bit of more patience to read the question with calm mind and understand and write. है ना, questions are tricky, the language is tricky, but the content is not. Content is clearly available in front of you. Okay, it is within the syllabus. Every topic is given in the syllabus. Fine. That is about the polity and governance. थोड़ा सा इस बार जो 3 क्वेश्चन आया है, it is like bit unconventional except the first question. Fine. The first one, implementation of these ICT based projects and programs. So that is clearly given here. You can see e-governance applications, right? So other than this, there are 2 questions on development. Okay, there is a topic on development process and development industries. So they have asked, the UPSC has asked both the questions on development process. Okay, how there is the neoliberal paradigm, neoliberal paradigm of development planning and the multi-level planning on those things, and the cooperation of different service sectors in the component of development discourse. Okay, this is bit thoda sa unconventional and bit more detail, I can say. Fine. So this is about the sectional analysis. So let's take up the questions. Fine. At the end, I'll tell you the overall analysis from this, because you will be able to correlate more whether the questions have been difficult. Because if I say the entire section is not that difficult and it is scoring, you might not understand now. Okay, let's see the questions, discuss one by one, and then let's see, analyze how the questions have been, and scoring hoga ya na hoga, scoring hoga to kaise hoga, all these things we'll see in the end. Fine. So let's start with polity. Okay, question number 1. Do you think the Constitution of India does not accept principle of strict separation of powers? Rather, it is based on the principle of checks and balance. Explain. है ना? So, starting first question, the first word itself, UPSC is asking, do you think? Okay, थोड़ा सा ढराने का method है. Okay, so ऐसे कुछ नहीं है इस question में. You can see that it is more of static question. Clearly static question and well established. Okay, इसमें do you think पूछ के like there is no ambiguity also. है ना? Usually do you think type of questions. Fine. It looks as if हमारा TV anchors पूछते do you think, do you accept, है ना? The nation wants to know. So it is just the language, the play of language. Okay, there is nothing much in this. Fine. Usually ऐसे वाले questions में there would be 2 choice. Normal kind, there would be 2 choices. You remember yesterday's discussion, do you think this regional resource based manufacturing is good for employment generation or not? There was 2 sides over there. It could have helped in generation of employment or not. But here it is well established. In polity and constitution it is well established. Okay, conclusion is fixed. But remember, you have to write conclusion here. Conclusion is important because the question specifically asks what do you think, है ना? Even though it is well established that there is no strict separation of principles, separation of powers, and it is the principle of checks and balance, that is what you have to write, है ना? But you have to write in the conclusion. It is important to write. Fine. So what would be the approach for this? So start with this separation of powers. You can introduce this separation of powers. What exactly is separation of powers? Fine. And you can talk about what is this strict separation of powers. Are there any countries which are implementing this strict separation of powers? Fine. And what is the constitutional provisions? Okay, you have to remember UPSC in this question, it is specifically asking what the constitution thinks, what the constitution is providing. So you have to clearly say this is the article through which constitution is providing for separation of powers. And it is the article through which it is providing for checks and balance. You have to clearly say what the constitution talks about it. Fine. So after this, the second part should be about what the constitution says about separation of powers and what the constitution also talks about checks and balances. Okay, you have to separately tell how it is there is a provision of separation of powers and how there is also a provision of checks and balances, and then there should be fourth part, which is conclusion. So what is the final opinion? What is your final opinion? Okay, these four parts should be there in your answer. Even though it is a 10 marker, so we expect you to write this. Fine. So you should understand the difference between this paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 mein the questions are direct. है ना? This is the first part, this is the second part, this is the third part, clearly दिया होता है. But it is not so with respect to paper 2. You have to identify. You have to identify which is the first part, which is the second part, which is the third part, and are there any part which is implied? Are there anything which you should not write, which is not required? All these things you have to identify, and it requires practice. Okay, you cannot just go to the examination and start writing over there. Fine, it requires practice. Practice will be more helpful in paper 2. Paper 2, even paper 3 also for that matter. Fine. So what is this separation of powers? Why it is required? Okay. No, that is state and union, that is not separation of power, that is distribution of power. Okay, that is distribution of power. When we talk about separation of power, it is about the different organs of the government. Okay, that is there are three organs of the government: legislature, executive and judiciary. Okay, so the separation of power as a principle talks that these three organs should be separate and independent. Why? To preserve liberty. For preserving liberty, if any one organ is becoming more powerful, it is becoming more authoritative than the other, okay, that can become a threat to the liberty of citizens. So that is why all the organs should be separate and independent, and none of the organs should be more powerful. Okay, so that is theory of separation of power, and that was proposed by Montesquieu. Okay, he was a French philosopher. He proposed this theory, and this was incorporated. Okay, this was incorporated by USA Constitution to the maximum extent. Even USA's Constitution is also completely separate. There is no complete watertight, and to the maximum extent, it has been incorporated by USA. And UK Constitution is the example for liberal separation of power, because there the Parliament is supreme. Okay, Parliament can do anything, Parliament can change anything. It is more of unitary form of government. Fine, you can write in the introduction. Then come to India's case. Fine, India is neither completely, it has not completely implemented this separation of power, complete watertight nahi hai, but with the checks and balance. है ना? It's not that one organ is completely independent of another one, but there is some kind of overlapping, some kind of checks and balances, so that there is more accountability of each organ with the other one. Okay, this is required for any kind of democracy. Fine, since we have developed this parliamentary system of government where the people elect this representatives, and they would become part of the parliament, and the executives are chosen from the parliament. This kind of checks and balances are required. But still there are clear-cut provisions for this separation of powers. So what are those provisions for separation of powers in the Indian Constitution? Article 50. What is Article 50? Separation of judiciary from the executive. Okay, you have to mention this. Article 50 talks about the separation of judiciary from the executive. Then Article 121 and 211. What is this? Can somebody tell? Article 121 and 211. Yes, good. Okay, the judicial conduct cannot be discussed in the parliament or the state legislature. Okay, judicial conduct, judicial functioning cannot be discussed or questioned in the parliament. Fine. So that means except this impeachment. Okay, that impeachment is the checks and balance. Here we are talking about the separation of power. You can write about this, and also 122 and 212. What is this? The opposite way. Okay, the functioning of parliament, parliamentary proceedings cannot be discussed in the, cannot be questioned in the judiciary. Fine. And we also have article 361. So what is this 361? Executive. Okay, president and governors cannot be questioned in the court of law for their official conduct. Fine. There is a clear-cut separation. So now let's see what are the checks and balances. So what is the checks and balance between legislature and executive? Collective responsibility. What is the article here? Article 75. Executives are chosen from the legislature and they are made collectively responsible to the legislature. And also parliament has some judicial powers too. What are the judicial powers of parliament? Contempt of court, impeachment. It is not appointment, it is impeachment of judges. है ना? That is judicial powers of parliament. Then executive have they have legislative powers. What are they? Article 123, ordinance making power of the executives, है ना? And executive also have judicial powers. Appointment of judges. Who appoints the judges? President is the head of executive, right? And what about the judiciary? Article 13 and 32, which talks about judicial review. Okay, these are the checks and balance. So you have to clearly write these are the constitutional provisions. The question says, what do you think the Constitution of India does not accept the principle of strict separation of power, rather it is based on the checks and balance? Yes, and this is being provided through these constitution articles. Fine. Clearly these two provisions should be written separately, तब भी marks मिलेगा आपको. Fine. What are the provisions for the separation? What are the provisions for checks and balances? And then conclusion. Yes, in case of India we have unique system of separation of powers along with the checks and balances. Okay, simple conclusion would be sufficient, but it is necessary. It should be there. Fine. Any doubts? So now tell me, is the question is easy? Is it not easy? Yes. So you just have to read it carefully and डरना नहीं, है ना? So पॉलिटी में जो डर गया समझो मर गया. See, particularly in these type of questions, where the questions are more indirect, है ना? So it is always suggested you have to think and write. Please spend some time in understanding the question. Okay, spend time in understanding the question. Suppose 10 marker, you would have 7.5 minutes or 8 minutes, right? Okay, in that time spend at least 30 seconds to 1 minute for thinking. It's totally fine. Okay, even if you're thinking much, it's totally fine. Maximum 1 minute tak you can think and then you start writing. Thoda sa question samajh ke organize your points, then you start writing, it will be faster. Always remember, mains is not about writing faster, it's thinking faster. Fine. So you organize your thoughts, organize the properly the structure, then you can write it faster. Fine. Okay, so that is checks and balances hai. That is why I said liberal separation of power, but it is not completely tight. If you see the overall history of UK, it is always the parliament which has been sovereign. Okay, they can change anything. They can change anything in the constitution by with a simple majority. Okay, simple process से change कर सकते हैं. So overall, if you see the powers of all the three organs, it is the parliament which is more powerful. But still there is some amount of checks and balance वो तो होना चाहिए. Fine. Yeah. Question number 4. From the resolution of contentious issues regarding distribution of legislative powers by the courts, principle of federal supremacy and harmonious construction have emerged. Explain. Fine. So there is a statement, and when they are saying explain, so usually these kind of statements are correct. Okay, they have given something, some argument, and asking you to explain. That means it is a correct statement. You don't have to explain. You don't have to go against the statement and write the answer here. Fine. So this is mainly because there are certain recent issues related to this, the center becoming more powerful in India, है ना? Because of majoritarian government, absolute majority, right? And there is not much opposition. There is a weak opposition. Fine. There are many issues, many authoritative measures, and one of such measures have also been said to be the recent initiative, Article 370 ka abrogation, right? So the question is not directly about that, but we can say it is inspired from this. Okay, we can say it is inspired from this. That is the distribution of legislative powers, the center taking more powers, right? So even in this question also we can say it is more of static nature, but inspired from current affairs. Inspired from current affairs because it takes some time to read and understand this question exactly क्या लिखना है, थोड़ा सोच के लिखना है. So this is, you can say, moderate to difficult. If you don't understand it clearly, you might miss it here. Fine. It is not an easy question. Moderate, you can say. So what is the approach here? What are the different parts? So first you start about distribution of legislative powers with the introduction. Okay, basic introduction होना चाहिए. Then you can talk about this principle of federal supremacy. Then harmonious construction. Okay, you just have to explain how this has emerged. Fine. So coming to the first part. So what is this distribution of legislative powers? Fine. So we have 7th schedule. 7th schedule which talks about distribution of legislative powers between center and states. We have 3 lists. List 1, list 2, list 3. List 1 is union, list 2 is state, list 3 is concurrent. Union has 100 subjects, state has 62, 61, okay, concurrent has 52. This is the current one. Fine. And why this distribution of power is required here? Because India is not completely unitary. Fine. It is not completely unitary, but also remember it is not completely federation. It is not completely federation. By seeing this distribution itself, we can come to a conclusion that it is more centered. It is more tilted towards the center. The distribution of power is more tilted towards the center. And this, even the concurrent list is the actual issue. There have been many times where both parliament and the state legislature has made the laws and there is overlapping and the issues have been created. Fine. And in that context, we have this doctrine of pith and substance to resolve the issue. And always remember, this Supreme Court is the only authority to resolve the issues between this distribution of power between the center and state. Okay, based on this doctrine of pith and substance, the Supreme Court has tried to resolve as much as possible. So what is this doctrine of pith and substance? Can somebody explain? Okay, tell me whatever you know. What is doctrine of pith and substance? Okay, anything else? Doctrine of pith and substance? Huh? No. See, doctrine of pith and substance comes into picture where there is a contention. Suppose center has made a law on a subject which is in the union list, but the states are approaching the court saying that this subject, even though in the union list, but the law is coming into the state list. The areas in which the law is there, the law is being implemented, those areas in the state list, there is some kind of overlapping. Fine. So in this context, the Supreme Court follows this doctrine of pith and substance. It is not just the area of overlapping. The Supreme Court will see the actual content of the law, the core matter of the law. What is the pith and substance of the law? If that matter is lying in the union list, then it is fine, even though it is coming into the sphere of state list. Fine. So based on this doctrine of pith and substance, this principle of federal supremacy and harmonious construction have been developed. Fine. Over the period of time, it has been accepted that federation, the center has more supremacy. Fine. The federal supremacy is given in that context, there is more importance to the center. And also harmonious construction is also in the same context that it is very difficult to differentiate the exact subjects. Even though the broader subject is mentioned in the list, there are many areas where there can be overlapping. In that case, the Supreme Court will interfere and it will interpret in such a manner that there is a harmony between the different lists. That is what is harmonious construction. Fine. So you start with the introduction, briefly talk about the distribution of powers, distribution of subjects between the different union and the state. Fine. And then you come to this principle of federal supremacy. What is this principle of federal supremacy? The federation, the union, in the federation, the union has been given more powers. Fine. So tell me the way in which union has been given more powers. You can see the subjects have been given more in the favor of union than the states, right? And if there is a overlapping, if any subject matter is not completely decided, it is always the union list, then the concurrent list, then the state list. The preference would come like that, right? And also if a subject is in the concurrent list and there is both union has made the law, parliament has made the law and the state legislature has made the law, in that case it is the union which prevails over the state. The union's law would prevail over the state law. Fine. And also in case of national emergency, the center can make laws over the states, state subjects. Fine. And during the president's rule, there also the parliament would assume the legislative powers of the states, right? And even in the normal times also, the governor can reserve any bill for the consideration of president. So this shows there is a supremacy of the center. Fine. So next aspect, harmonious construction. How there is a harmony between these two. So harmonious construction is basically that doctrine based on which the Supreme Court, the court would interpret these in a wider ambit. Okay, जो भी subjects है, they would not restrict this because you cannot like completely restrict करके very narrow ambit में interpret करना बहुत मुश्किल है ना? Whatever the subjects which are mentioned in these lists are only single subjects. उसके अंदर बहुत कुछ आ सकता है. Whether this law belongs to this subjects or the other subject, कैसा interpret करना है? The Supreme Court had said that it will give a wider amplitude. Okay, then it will come to a conclusion providing more harmony between these two. Harmony between the center and state. Okay, that is what harmonious construction. Okay, there is this Tikaram versus state of UP. Okay, you don't have to remember the case, you don't have to write the case, but at least you can write the incident. So this is the case which proves this harmonious construction. Fine. So what happened in this? The UP state was imposing more prices of sugar cane than what the center has recommended. Okay, sugar cane would be grown by the farmers and that would be procured by the sugar mills. है ना. When they procure, they have to pay some price, and this price is fair and remunerative price for sugarcane. This would be given by the center. When usually it would be given by the center, and UP had brought some rule that it had prescribed the price above the FRP. So the people went to Supreme Court, the mill owners went to Supreme Court, saying that this is a controlled industry. Sugar production is a controlled industry which comes under the union list, right? So Supreme Court said, and they are contesting that this does not belong to UPs. The state list mein nahi aate, so they cannot prescribe. They cannot say that we have to pay more price, right? And Supreme Court said, even though it comes under the controlled industry, the raw material procured for this industry, that is sugar cane, is a raw material which comes under the ambit of state, right? And state can definitely prescribe. Even though it is coming under the union list, we can bring some harmony in between this. So that is what is harmonious construction. You can give this example. Supreme Court upheld this case. Okay, it upheld the decision of UP government to impose the price above the FRP. When you can mention any of this. So you don't have to write the case. When you can just mention the incident. So even there are many other things which shows that there is a harmony between this. Okay, even though in case of the national emergency, the parliament takes over, parliament can legislate the functions of on the subjects of the state list. Even in that case also, the state legislature can legislate on those subjects. It's not that the state's power is suspended, right? There is also harmony over here. Can give any of these examples. Yes, that is also good example. 249, है ना? So that is also good example. That is also for harmonious construction. See, basically the overall idea is that the center makes law for the larger issues, considering the entire country in the picture, and the state would make law for the local needs, है ना? So based on this, the court would decide whether there is a issue, whether really there is a overlapping or not. That would be decided by the court. That is what is principle of harmonious construction. Somebody else was asking? No. Delhi is, it's not a state, hai na? So we cannot write that. That is union territory. Union territory would not come under separation of powers. Okay, don't write about union territory. Separation of powers is only between the center and states. Fine. Anything else? Not much. ज़्यादा scope नहीं है इधर. Okay. Yeah, you can write. Not in a controversial way. Okay, in an official language. Officially criticize करना. Huh? No, it is not the distribution. It is the resolution. Resolution of these issues by the court. है ना? No. It is इतना ज़्यादा scope नहीं है. You have to explain about this. What is this principle of federal supremacy, and also talk about the harmonious construction. So if you write this much, it is sufficient. Fine. So next question. Question number 11. So this question on RPA 1951. So clearly it is because it was a election year, है ना? General elections था 2019. So directly एक question था. Fine. And if you see the question, it looks easy. Okay, it looks easy. Why am I saying it looks easy? Because easily मतलब पता चलता है RPA 1951 जो directly है, but it is not easy. Okay, it is not easy. It is question paper 2. You have to read the questions very carefully. Okay, I'll tell you what are the tricks here. So on what grounds a people's representative can be disqualified under RPA 1951, and mention the remedies available to such persons against his disqualification. We all have read this first part. Remedies usually we don't read. Okay, this makes the question bit difficult, otherwise it would have been moderate. The second part, you have to write specifically what are the remedies available. Come to the first part, it talks about on what grounds people's representatives are disqualified. Okay, who are these people representatives? Okay, remember they are elected members, not the ones who are nominated or not the ones who are contesting the elections. There are separate disqualifications for the people who are contesting the elections. You should not write that. Okay, it is only for MLAs and MPs. MLAs and MPs. Okay, not the people who are contesting the elections. You have to make a differentiation here. If you are writing about the disqualification of the people who are contesting the elections, that is a wrong answer. You have to write only about this, and also remember this is under RPA. Okay, many of the students have written what is given in the constitution. Okay, constitution में दिया है people with unsound mind, one who is not a citizen of India, है ना, office of profit, anti-defection law, और yeah, and वो जो insolvent, मतलब one who has taken loans and is declared as insolvent. Fine. So all these would not come here. So it's basically directly from the RPA 1951. So this makes the question difficult. Is it so? You have to write about the provisions given in the RPA 1951. And clearly you can see in the syllabus directly the RPA you have to read in detail. Now people tend to not to see in detail over there. You have to read separately RPA 1950 and RPA 1951. दोनों अलग-अलग पढ़ना है. Nominated members would come here. People's representative, na? So there they would come. They would also be people representative only. It's not the people who are contesting the elections. So what are the different parts here? First, give a brief introduction about this RPA 1951. So under this act, what are the grounds? This is the second part, and then mention the remedies, third part. So is there a need of conclusion here? Not required. Okay, directly not required, because the question is simple. They're asking what are the grounds. You just have to mention the grounds and mention the remedies available. You don't have to analyze, you don't have to comment upon this, you don't have to give a discussion on this. You just have to mention. In these type of question, there is no need of separate conclusion. है ना? So what is this RPA 1951? How it is different from 1950? Yes, good. See, RPA 1950 talks about all the provisions related to before election, whether it is about the qualification of the voters or demarcation of the constituencies, है ना, all these things which is before the election. That is what is 1950. 1951 talks post-election or during elections. Post-elections or during elections, what are the provisions that directly comes under 1951? And one of the main provision is the disqualification. Disqualification of the members who are elected members. है ना? So as I said earlier, in the constitution, so there are different provisions for disqualification. And one of the provision is that disqualification by any law made by the parliament, and that law is RPA 1951. है ना, disqualification के लिए it is 1951. Okay, 1950 नहीं है, 1950 voters के लिए आता है, not for the elected representatives. So what are the disqualifications mentioned in RPA 1951? Okay. Okay, let's go one by one. RPA के under the first one is electoral malpractice. Okay, it is proved that after the election he was involved in any of the malpractice, he can be disqualified. And if he has failed to file any of the election expense, क्योंकि election expense को सबको maintain करना पड़ता है. Okay, it is after the election, if the EC is asking, then they have to submit. And it is found that he has been spending more than the prescribed limit. That is election disqualification. He will be disqualified. Okay, जो अभी paid news issue है, that would also come under this only, क्योंकि paid news is not a direct electoral offense. So since he is paying for the news, so that would not be accounted in his electoral expense. So that would be a disqualification. Fine. So other than this, if he is involved in any social, जो social issues है, untouchability or promoting enmity between different groups, है ना? Even dowry would come under this, practice of sati. Fine. And also, if he is involved in any corruption, if he is involved in any corruption and it has been proved, fine, and if he is convicted for more than 2 years of term, है ना? If he is convicted for more than 2 years of term, he would be disqualified, है ना? So these are the different provisions under RPA which you have to write separately. Fine. So these are the provisions under RPA. Now tell me what are the remedies available here. Advance notice कहाँ? हाँ? Court को approach करना है, ठीक है, that is also one of that. Okay, start from the beginning. See, so there is no disqualification at the stage of filing the charge sheet. चार्ज शीट फाइल करते समय डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं है. Okay, ऐसे डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया तो एवरीवन वुड बी डिस्क्वालिफाइड, राइट? So there is no disqualification at the time of filing the charge sheet against the person. Only after he has been convicted, then only there is a disqualification. And also, the term of disqualification is not uniform. It is varying as per the offense. In some offense it is less, in some offense it is more. And the disqualification also under RPA, it is only in case of certain conviction, and only if it is more than 2 years. If the conviction is more than 2 years, then only he will be disqualified for 6 more years. If it is less than 2 years, it will not be. है ना? Earlier there was another provision here. So there would be a time period of 3 months within which if he is appealing, this disqualification would not be done. Okay, but वो तो हटा दिया, अभी तो नहीं है. Okay, that is not a remedy anymore. So anything else? You can always approach this higher courts. Okay, you can always approach the higher courts, and in some offenses like dowry and even anti-profiteering offenses वो भी है, उसके अंदर he can directly appeal to president. Can directly appeal to the president. Fine. And in some cases, EC also has the power to remove the disqualification. Okay, you don't have to write the section, इतना तो याद नहीं होता है. Fine. In some cases, EC has the power to remove the disqualification or reduce the disqualification. Fine. All these are remedies. है ना? थोड़ा सा difficult part है, because it is difficult because we don't give importance here. So otherwise it is a easy part. You read the question carefully, understand the question carefully, then you think of writing, it will be easy. Fine. The trickiness is involved more in this question, not in the answers. Is that right? Any doubts here? Question number 12. So question looks very lengthy, है ना? Again, question देख के नहीं डरना है, ठीक है? If you read the question carefully, it is one of the easiest of all. This is the easiest of all and clear content है इसपे. Okay, clear cut content. So Lakshmikant में we have a separate chapter also. 2 पेज का एक chapter भी है, basic structure. You can completely write it from that, right? So you just have to read the question carefully. So Parliament's power to amend the constitution is a limited power and it cannot be enlarged into absolute power. In light of the statement, explain whether the Parliament under Article 368 of the Constitution can destroy the basic structure of the Constitution by expanding its amending power. This statement is directly from the Minerva Mill case. है ना? Minerva Mill में यही दे दिया है. So if you read this question carefully, you can easily answer this. Fine. The content is static, so the question is easy. Fine. The question is easy. So what are the things which we have to write here? So start with Article 368. Okay, give a brief introduction of Article 368. Fine. Then you talk about the basic structure. Fine. And then you come to the third part, whether this can be enlarged or not. Fine. It is, remember, you have to use the cases which is given here. So few important cases, है ना, which everyone should know. Whoever is reading polity, they should know. ऐसे ज़्यादा मुश्किल भी नहीं है. Fine. So what is this Article 368? The power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution. है ना? So this power has been given to the Parliament so that the Parliament would change the Constitution as per the need of time. And that is very much necessary for any kind of constitution. The power should be given to the Parliament. Fine. So it can amend the constitution in three manners. The first one is through simple majority, then special majority, then special plus half of the state's ratification. है ना? Many of the subjects can be done by simple majority. Fine. Example, जो changing the boundaries of the state, है ना? Then special majority, anything related to fundamental rights, and special plus half of the states, anything related to federal provisions. Okay, so this is Article 368. But is it absolute? No. In the Constitution itself, it is given. It is not absolute. It is limited. कैसे? Okay, if you see the procedure itself, that is, it requires a special majority. It cannot change everything using a simple majority, right? In some of the cases, it requires special majority plus ratification of half the states. It is not that easy, right? And any of these ratification, any of these changes can be questioned by the court using judicial review. Is that right? Fine. It can be questioned by the judicial review. You can give the examples. NJSC, right? And the most important one, it is subject to the doctrine of basic structure. Fine. There is a limitation in the constitution itself. Fine. So what is this basic structure? So basic structure doctrine is developed over the period of time, basically. So to talk about, to come to a conclusion about whether Parliament can change everything or not. It started first with the Shankari Prasad case. Shankari Prasad case, what is the Shankari Prasad case? Which questioned the first amendment. है ना? So basically whether the Parliament can make laws to amend the fundamental rights or not. Whether the Parliament can make laws to amend the fundamental rights or not. In this case, the Supreme Court accepted that yes, there is a difference between the normal laws and the laws made under Article 368. And normal laws you cannot amend the fundamental rights, but using the powers in the Article 368, you can amend these fundamental rights. Okay, this has been accepted here. But the second case is Golaknath case. So in this, it made a U-turn. है ना? And it is very interesting, the Supreme Court said that yes, there is a provision of Article 368 where there is a procedure is given, but the power is not given. And Parliament has no power, only the procedure is given. So it made a U-turn here. So Parliament cannot amend any of these provisions. Fine. And then they brought 24th Amendment Act. 24th Amendment Act, using this, they gave the power to themselves. है ना? So if Supreme Court is saying so, we'll go against that. Fine, they granted the power to themselves, and also they said that these powers, jo bhi utilizing these powers, whatever the provisions which we have brought, that cannot be questioned in the court of law. So that has been questioned in Keshavananda Bharati case. Keshavananda Bharati case, this is one of the landmark case. So in this, the Supreme Court upheld this 24th Amendment Act and said, okay, if you want to amend the constitution, you can do so, but you cannot disturb the basic structure of the constitution. Fine, without disturbing the basic structure, you have any power to amend the constitution. That is when this doctrine of basic structure came into the picture. Fine. So according to this, there are certain principles, certain provisions of the constitution which should not be amended, which has been made by the makers of the constitution as the core principles of the constitution, and nobody should disturb that. And over the period of time, the Supreme Court had said these are the provisions which come under basic structure. Fine. But the center did not keep quiet. 42nd Amendment Act. So in this, again it override these previous provisions and said that Parliament has unlimited powers. And it can amend any part of the constitution, and this can never be questioned in the court of law. And this was questioned in Minerva Mill case. Minerva Mill case. In this, the Supreme Court again upheld the principle of basic structure, the provision of basic structure, saying that this cannot be touched. And in this case, this statement has been made. The Parliament's power to amend the constitution is limited power, and it cannot be enlarged to absolute power. Okay, and in this, it is also made this limited power of the constitution as part of basic structure. The limited power of the Parliament to amend the constitution is again part of basic structure. It cannot enlarge this power to become more absolute. Okay, this again has been upheld in कौन सा case? IR Coelho case. है ना? IR Coelho case. In that, not only the basic structure has been upheld, it also said even the 9th schedule can also be challenged in the court. 9th schedule is basically, schedule is there to prevent court from challenging. तो वो भी गया. So it actually enlarged this basic structure. Fine. So you have to write all these cases. Cases are important. Remember, these cases are very, very important in polity. And always try to remember the important cases in polity. तो एक बार कोयला केस directly पूछ लिया था. Fine. So they can directly ask. Yes, yes, you can quote it. You can say that is also one of the evidence that Parliament's power is limited and it is not very easy to amend the constitution. Yes, yes. US is more rigid. US is more rigid. That is why it is not too rigid, not too easy. It is in between. Okay, it is in between. Yes. So that is part of basic structure itself. Question number 15. Individual parliamentarians' role as the national lawmaker is on a decline, which in turn has adversely impacted the quality of debates and their outcomes. Discuss. Fine. So basically the question is again static type. है ना, static type, moderate difficulty, ऐसे ज़्यादा difficult भी नहीं है. So you just have to understand the question and the demand carefully. Fine. So basically the question is again coming into the picture because of the absolute majority and there is not much opposition. So that is bringing the role of individual parliamentarian to the lower extent. Fine. So in that case the question has been asked, so what is the approach here? So in the introduction you can write about the role of this parliamentarian. Okay, briefly you can write what exactly is the role, and this is on decline. So why it is on decline? Fine. Anything else? Should we write anything else here? Yeah, that is impact. So what is the impact? Fine. And since the question is saying discuss, you have to write a conclusion. Fine. So this is how you have to identify the different parts. Fine. You have to identify the different parts, then you start writing. And these parts should be there in your answer. If you miss any of these parts, the marks would be deducted further. So what is the role of this individual parliamentarians? What exactly is the role? So parliament का role क्या है? To make laws. To make laws and also to bring more accountability of the executive towards the legislature. Fine. So all these things are there, and these role is done by these parliamentarians, individual MPs. Fine. So their role is mainly about discussing the bills. Any bill introduced in the parliament should be thoroughly discussed and see if there are any provisions which can go against the people, because they are the people's representatives. That is why we have sent them to the parliament. They have to see and discuss. Fine. And also to vote for these bills. And not only discuss, they should also vote or not to vote. Fine. Then okay, that is, you can say private members' bills. Usually the government which presents the bill, even the parliamentarians can present the bills, that is private members' bills. So if there is a need from the demand, there is a demand for any kind of new bill from the people, new law from the people, that has to be done by these members. Okay, remember, private member bill doesn't mean that they're from opposition. Any person who is not a minister, that would be a private member's bill. Fine. And also scrutinize, more in-depth scrutinize through these parliamentary committees. Okay, there are different parliamentary committees for which the bills would be referred, and they can scrutinize it in detail. Fine. Anything else? More accountability, bringing more accountability of the government, है ना, through 0-hour discussions and even no confidence motion. Fine. And even they have developmental roles. So what are the developmental roles? MP lad, है ना, they can supervise the implementation of the schemes in their districts. Fine, वो भी कर सकते हैं, but in this would be sufficient because this is more about the law making powers. Fine. How it has been on the decline? Mainly because of anti-defection law. So what is this anti-defection law? Yeah, there would be a whip appointed by the party, and whatever that person says, the members have to follow. And if they are going against the whip's direction, he can be disqualified from the party, and once he is disqualified from the party, he will be disqualified obviously from the membership of the house. Fine. For anti-defection he can be disqualified. So this has been the major threat behind the involvement of individual parliamentarians. They are not at all involving in this healthy discussions. Okay, any major decision of the government, major bills hai, they would issue the whip and no member of the party can oppose it. So this is reducing the healthy discussions in the parliament. Fine. Anything else? Delay in start of sessions, or you can say delay in disruptions. Okay, there is no constructive opposition. Constructive opposition nahi hai. Yes, they passing the bill without referring to these parliamentary committees. है ना, number of bills which have been referred to the parliamentary committees have reduced over the period of time, and even you can say this absence of members. Fine. Even in constructive opposition also, like the members who debate in the parliament, they are appointed by the parties. The political parties would appoint who would be discussing, who would be debating on this. So usually the members who are loyal to the party, they would be given a chance. Fine. There is no fair chance for everyone here. There is no intra-party democracy. Right? There is no intra-party democracy. Then any other reasons why there is a decline? Yes, you can say adjournment and disruptions, and also criminalization of politics. When criminals are entering the politics with their money power and muscle power, they don't know what to do in the parliament. So what would they do in discussing? So they are sitting and watching videos, right? So these are the reasons behind this decline. So what is the impact? What is the impact of this? The law. There can be many issues in the law. So when the bills have been not discussed properly, so there would be defective law, which can be easily upheld as invalid by the court. So that also increases judicial interference. Fine. Then the concentration of power in few hands. There is an absolute majority, there is not much opposition. So party leaders would decide what to do, what not to do, and the whip would say everyone would have to follow it. There is a concentration of power in few. Any other impacts? Increased? Yes, you can say less accountability. As per Article 75, there should be more accountability of the executive towards the legislature. Okay, there is no accountability at all. So this is the impact. What is the conclusion? See, conclusion, because it is talking about the discuss. You should say there is also need for such provisions like anti-defection. There is a need for this. Otherwise, the government would not be stable. But these such provisions should be used only in few cases. Only in the cases where it can cause a threat to the formation of government, threat to the stability of government, not in every other case. Fine, you should give some of the points in the other side also. Say yes, there is a need, but this should not be used all the times. Fine, and there is a need of more active participation, constructive opposition, and more intra-party democracy, giving chance to the members based on their merit rather than their loyalty. You can write all this in the conclusions. Yes, that is what is intra-party democracy. Fine. Yes, this is also good. Very few, in fact like 1970 से कोई private member bill ही pass नहीं हुआ है. So that shows that the role has reduced. Fine. So that covers polity. Some of more polity questions are there. So that would be taken by the next faculty.
Hello and welcome to the next part of the discussion. We are continuing with paper 2 and we will be covering questions from ranging to constitution, polity, social justice and international relations. Alright, so let's start with question number 2. Let's start with polity and constitution. And what we have here is a pretty straightforward question with some twist, but has to be answered in a very straightforward way. So what is this question? Question number 2. It is asking you that the Central Administrative Tribunal, which was established for redressal of grievances and complaints by or against government employees, nowadays is exercising its power as an independent judicial authority. Explain. Explainer. कोई critical analysis नहीं, कोई भी सारी चीजें नहीं, but थोड़ा सा critical इसमें होना पड़ेगा. What is it that we need to know? Some bit of history. It comes from that part of the syllabus which asks you to acquire knowledge about statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. So generally a body like Central Administrative Tribunal is categorized under what are called quasi-judicial bodies. All right. It has certain constitutional linkage as well because it came into existence after the 42nd constitutional amendment, and specifically when you talk about CAT, it is associated with 323A. So when you are answering such questions, these kind of projections become important, that you at the very outset show to the examiner that you know the specific constitutional provisions or any articles associated with this. All right. Now it has a history. 14th Law Commission talked about tribunal. Then the Swaran Singh Committee also in 1976 talked about the need of tribunals. Why was this need of tribunals felt? Most prominently because there was a sort of arrears in high courts. The judiciary was facing with the problems, as it is the case today, high number of cases. All right. And second aspect was, in order to simplify the disbursal of justice, the creation of such organizations which would be freed from the technicalities that is existent in the current judicial system. And thirdly, it was also associated with the idea of disbursing cheap justice. All right. A justice which does not require a lot of money. Right. So CAT, you can go to CAT with as less as 50 rupees in your pocket. If you are a government employee, central government employee, you can get the issues associated with service conditions, transfers, all right, recruitment addressed by the CAT. So that is what the CAT does. Now what we need to remember is A, it comes directly from a constitutional amendment 323. A is what empowered the enactment of the Administrative Tribunals Act 1985. So a tribunal by definition has to be empowered by a statute. So in that sense, it is also a statutory body. That is what is happening. Now when you see, in order for it to work, there are certain special provisions which are made. For example, it is not encumbered by the technicalities of, say, the Evidence Act of 1872. So the Evidence Act basically governs in what circumstances which kind of evidence can be admissible or are not admissible, in what form should they be submitted when you go to the court. Court में technicality बहुत बड़ा एक हिस्सा है. Similarly, it is empowered by CPC with some powers of a civil court, but by and large it is also not encumbered by the Civil Procedure Code. That is also happening simultaneously. So insofar as the expertise in specific matters such as recruitment or service conditions or transfers or postings are concerned, its decisions by and large have been as though it is an independent judicial authority. Why? Simply because it had the power of civil courts in certain matters, certain manners, and B, for a long time, its decisions could not have been appealed at the level of the High Court. All right. So till that part is concerned, yes, it can be said that it started acting as an independent judicial body. But you must also remember that it is not an independent judicial body. This knowledge comes from the fact the way its members are appointed. These are executive appointments. President appoints them, but then executive appointments. And then you would also find that not all the members of CAT are part of judiciary or are judicial members. All right, you have administrative members, you have judicial members also. So that is where you would also find that it is not exactly a judicial body. Similarly, the constitutional safeguards, as you would find with the High Court or Supreme Court, are also not available in the case of CAT. All right, and the Supreme Court made it very clear in the L. Chandra Kumar case. This is one case that you should have mentioned. There are other cases also, such as the Sampath case, but then L. Chandra Kumar case is something that you should have mentioned. In this, the Supreme Court accepted that the CAT or the Administrative Tribunal in its own sphere has certain specific powers. For example, it can decide on the validity of subordinate legislation. However, it under no circumstances can be beyond the judicial review provisions mentioned in the Constitution. So then the Supreme Court also said that the decisions of the CAT can be appealed at a division bench of the High Court. So bringing it firmly under the judicial review as it exists, as it is available even at the level of High Court. So this has been the history. Now the law commission's 215th report, 72nd report are relevant in this particular context. You could have quoted them in the context of either whether you are defining tribunal or you are talking about the nature of tribunals, evolution of tribunals. Similarly, the Delhi High Court judgment 2019, if you look at it, in one of its judgment, it asked the CAT to not be casual, to apply the rigors in the cases that are brought before it, because one of the cases went for appeal to the High Court, and High Court said, unfortunately, it seems that the rigor, the application of mind is missing in this particular case. So यानी कि CAT को High Court भी डांट सकता है, all right, डांटा भी है, but CAT ने भी कह दिया भाई, you set your house in order. तो ये डिबेट हमेशा चलती रहेगी. एक करंट पोजीशन क्या है? An administrative tribunal is neither a court nor an executive body. It is something in between. All right, somewhere midway of a court and an administrative body. That is very clear. And that is why this debate. Some people would say that it is exercising independent judicial authority. Some people would say technically it cannot be an independent judicial authority. All right. So this is something that you had to impress upon when you were talking about this particular question. What was required? That you firmly have a knowledge about what are tribunals, what are its constitutional moorings, and what are important cases associated with it which either limit or expand its horizons. All right, and unless there are other changes which are being discussed in the context of tribunal, this would remain the reality. So what should you read? You should of course read your favorite book, which is Lakshmikant, but please remember Lakshmikant these days is no longer going to support you both at the level of pre as well as at the level of mains. So you would have to supplement your reading of Lakshmikant with other books. Now that is your choice. Read D.D. Basu. In this year's examination, Brij Kishore Sharma's book on constitution has suddenly become important. All right. So whether you read D.D. Basu, you read Granville Austin भी पढ़ सकते हैं आप अगर आपका मन है तो, all right. ब्रिज किशोर शर्मा भी पढ़ सकते हैं अगर आपका मन है तो, और कहीं आगे जाना चाहते हैं तो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन supplement your reading of Lakshmikant with something else. All right, with something else. Lakshmikant is good because of its thematic organization. All right. You would not find it easy to read the constitution directly. So thematic organization you can find from Lakshmikant. But you have to supplement that with some other standard source. That is a very clear requirement. All right. Okay. So this was the question. Now let's take the next question, which is, what are the methods used by farmers, organizations, all right, to influence the policy makers in India? How effective are these methods? Two parts of the question, 150 words, very clearly from pressure groups and formal, informal associations and their role in polity. All right, so in polity what is happening? There are various groups with contending demands, and then there is government which makes the policy, which has the authority to make the policy. So you cannot say that government can always act alone. That kind of a government then would not be very popular. The government would have to take into consideration demands from various sections of society. So how are these demands collected, articulated and channeled? So you have elected representatives, you have political parties, you have then pressure groups and interest groups which generally represent the demands of various sections of society. One of them is the farmers' organizations. So generally what do? They organize farmers around the common demands of the farming community. They may be about cheap electricity, they may be about access to market, they may be about subsidies, all right. They may be about minimum support price or the Swaminathan price as is being debated these days. So these are the demands that they articulate. How do they do so? Well, there are constitutional and extra constitutional methods that these organizations adopt. Prayers and petitions. In delegation, meeting people's representatives, submitting petitions to administration, local administration, or participating in pre-budget consultation of the finance minister, तो ये तो आपके पास कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मेजर्स अवेलेबल है जहां पे आके आप अपनी डिमांड रख सकते हैं. अगर ये नहीं होता तो देन extra constitutional methods also, bans and hartals, you must have come across such news very frequently in recent times. तो बिल्कुल आप कर सकते हैं. भारतीय किसान यूनियन, निषेधकारी संगठन, ऑल राइट, बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं. उसमें आपके इंटेलिजेंस पे मैं कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं कर रहा हूं. और मैं बेसिकली फार्मर्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में क्लास भी नहीं पढ़ा रहा हूं, तो बेसिक जानकारी तो आपके पास होगी, है ना. दैट इज नॉट द बेसिक इशू कि आप नाम नेम कर रहे हैं कि नहीं कर रहे. मेथड्स के बारे में कुछ नहीं, बिल्कुल नेम कर सकते हैं. और नेम कर सकते हो आप आइडेंटिफाई कर लिए कि BKSS ने ये किया, भारतीय किसान संघ ने ये किया, ऐसे करेंगे? ऐसे नहीं करेंगे ना. तो फिर नाम की क्या वैल्यू है? केवल ये दिखाना कि मुझे किसान संगठनों का नाम पता है, बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं. मेथड्स के बारे में मेन क्वेश्चन है. ऑल राइट. बंस एंड हड़ताल्स. बंद एंड हड़ताल में आप नाम ले सकते हैं. किसका नाम ले सकते हैं? टिकैत साहब के संगठन का. ऑल राइट. कई बार दिल्ली को घेर लिया. ऑल राइट. ओके, ये सारी चीजें. दूसरा, मोबिलाइजेशन, मास मोबिलाइजेशन बंद एंड हड़ताल में भी हो रहा है. बट यू हैव मस्ट हैव सीन इन रीसेंट टाइम्स फार्मर्स मार्च टू दिल्ली. दिल्ली चलो, दिल्ली चलो या लोकल कैपिटल चलो, मुंबई चलो. ऑल राइट. So these mobilization methods are also utilized wherein large number of farmers are then asked to come to the political nerve center and then emphasize that they also have power, and then influencing elections also. They do not fight elections, but at times, since they represent, especially after the Green Revolution, they represent certain dominant communities in villages, in rural areas. They are also seen as an instrument of vote bank by political parties. So they try to leverage that position also. All right, by tactically aligning with one political party or the other. All right, and sometimes they clearly have political affiliation. All right, so the farmers organizations associated with CPIM or farmers associations associated with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or the Bharatiya Janata Party, so they also have, or in many cases Congress Party, so they also have political affiliation. In these ways they try to influence the government decision making. How effective are they? So you would see after the Green Revolution, to a large extent the farmers movement were able to get for themselves, to garner for themselves allocation in terms of subsidies. All right, either in terms of electricity prices or in terms of prices of farm input. So they were successful to a certain extent there. All right, in recent times they have been demanding the granting of the MS Swaminathan report's recommendation. They are partially successful in that, and then generally the historical experience is by the very fact that time and again you would see farmers mobilization means there is no question of permanent success in their demands, because times are changing. All right, ultimately within farmers organization also various interests are changing. Some people would say that these are representative of large farmers. These are not representatives of small farmers. They have not been able to achieve say measures of land reform or distribution of land. So in a certain sense, in this kind of a question, you cannot have, yes, they have been absolutely successful, no, they have been a failure. They have been successful to a certain extent, especially in the aftermath of Green Revolution. In recent times, they have been coping up with changing times, wherein in the context of the MS Swaminathan committee report, they have been partially successful insofar as government has started talking about remunerative prices. But the recommendation of the Swaminathan committee in toto has not been accepted, so that there is partial success. Similarly, insofar as they are not being able to articulate the demands of marginal farmers is concerned, you cannot say that they are completely successful. So towards the end, that is something that you need to understand or write about. All right, is there any doubt here? Most definitely you can write that. That is also an example how they have not been able to address the fundamental problems. All right. of the agrarian or agricultural sector. Yes, very well you can write that.
So it's trying to say that it is not very effective to or that these methods are not because long term में तो कुछ हो ही नहीं रहा है.
आप very effective कहने की क्या जरूरत है? They have had partial success insofar as certain issues are concerned, but as far as structural issues, long-term issues, or issues of different sections of farmers are concerned, they have either failed to articulate them or they have either failed to get them redressed by the government. All right, आपका point बिल्कुल सही है, लेकिन इसका आंसर ये नहीं होगा ये क्लियरली फेल्ड है या क्लियरली सक्सेसफुल. इसका आंसर ये होगा ये पार्शियली सक्सेसफुल है, but in a certain context they have also not been very effective through these methods. All right, okay, so once we have dealt with it, let's go to the other question number 13. Question number 13. पलट लिया आपने पन्ने, साउंड इफेक्ट काफी अच्छा था. ऑल राइट, द रिजर्वेशन ऑफ seats for women in institutions of local self-government has had limited impact on the patriarchal character of the Indian political process. comment करना है, राय देनी है, मतलब आप दोनों तरफ जाने की बारी आ गई. All right, so first of all it is from the devolution of powers and finances up to local levels and challenges there in that particular section. All right, you can in a certain sense also talk about this being a part of social justice related syllabus. All right, now let's talk about the basic features of this answer. What would you include? You would include constitutional provisions that have enabled reservation of seats for women. For example, 243D allowing for 1/3 reservation for women in Panchayati Raj institutions. All right, also chairpersons at all levels of Panchayati Raj institutions. Part 9 of the Constitution. ये prominently आपके आंसर में दिखना चाहिए. All right, ये prominently आपके आंसर में दिखना चाहिए. अब आप अर्बन लोकल बॉडीज के बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं तो वो भी आप कर सकते हैं. ये मत पूछिएगा कि ये भी होना चाहिए क्या, बिल्कुल होना चाहिए. ये इंडिकेटिव है कि आपको क्या लिखना है इसमें. All right, now अब आपको बात क्या करनी है? Have they been successful? Yes, as far as the numbers approach is concerned, they are successful because it is clearly visible that there are 1.5 million women holding positions in Panchayati Raj institutions. All right, 36.8% of all those elected in these offices are women. And if you compare it with state legislature or the union parliament, this is certainly an impressive number. Similarly, you can quote examples of states like Bihar. क्या देंगे example वहां से? Bihar has provided for 50% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj institutions, and therein you would see 54% of all the elected representatives are at the Panchayat level. And then you would also find that many of the studies, if you go to the Niti Aayog or the Planning Commission or the World Bank, किसी को भी आप quote करना चाहे, they have observed that when women representatives are allowed to share office, what happens is A, local issues are effectively addressed. B, women's related issues are effectively raised and addressed. It generates a confidence among women. All right, so that is something there. And also there is some correlation drawn by certain studies with corruption. All right, that corruption also gets reduced with the impact of women holding office. ये आपको बात कर ली, हमने सक्सेस बता दी, पर आपको फेलियर बताना है ज्यादा. फेलियर क्या है? That despite the provision for 1/3 reservation, what has not changed is the patriarchal structure that exists in families, also in societies, right? So for example, women are not considered to be equal in terms of decision making in families and in public offices. In families, we know that only because you become a sarpanch does not change your status in the family. All right, in public offices you are seen as a proxy for your spouse or your family or male members of your family. So that is where you would see the pattern of Sarpanchpati or Adhyakshpati continues. Elected representative is the wife, but the one who claims that he is doing the work is the husband. All right. So this phenomenon continues, and it is reflective of patriarchy as it operates in families, also percolates into public sphere. And you would also see that this reservation does not make women insulated from the traditional problems that they face, emotional and physical violence. All right, name calling is common. Physical violence is a part of our electoral process, na? Indian political process. If you are not, you don't believe in it, go to Bengal. One political party is trying to safeguard its citadel, another political party wants to dislodge them. The common instrument both of them are applying is violence. All right. So in a certain sense, women still remain vulnerable to physical violence under the political system, but also emotional violence. Similarly, what you would see is the way patriarchy acts in Indian society is also seen from here. Where there is reservation, of course, 1/3 women are coming. All right. But then when there is no reservation, the reservation at the ground level is not percolating, translating into increased representation of women in state legislatures or parliament. ऐसा तो नहीं हो रहा. पंचायत में रिजर्वेशन है इसलिए मजबूरी में दे दिया, लेकिन इट इज नॉट चेंज्ड द वे वी ऑपरेट इन आवर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज नहीं चेंज हुई, हम लोग चेंज नहीं हुए. women are not considered to be winnable candidates. कहते हैं ना, winnability is the basis of ticket distribution. हर political party यही कहती है. All right, social change से लेना देना उनका कुछ भी नहीं है. Similarly, you would also not find that it has changed the representation of women within political parties. अब ये अलग बात है कि political parties have women leaders, है ना? Across the political parties, you have women leaders, women chairpersons of the party, chief ministers also, but that does not mean that party functionaries, the composition of party functionaries has changed. That is also reflective of a view which confines women to certain kinds of role. Even now, how many families would encourage their child to enter into politics? Male को भी नहीं करेंगे ना, कहेंगे गंदगी है. All right. पर फिर भी मेल डोमेन तो माना जाता है पॉलिटिक्स. तो इस रिजर्वेशन से ये सारी चीजें नहीं हुई हैं. इन दोनों चीजों को बैलेंस करके आपको लिखना है. आइडियल तरीका ये होगा, आप शुरुआत में लिखें कि क्या क्या बुराइयां हैं, आप एग्री करें कि हाँ इट हैज नॉट चेंज बिकॉज ऑफ दिस 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 दिस, और फिर अंत में आप एक पॉजिटिव ट्विस्ट दे दे, कहें कि कुछ तो हुआ है. इस देश में हमेशा यही कहना है, कुछ तो हुआ है, सरकार ने कुछ तो किया है, कुछ तो हो रहा है, समथिंग इज हैपनिंग, है ना. So that is something that you can write. The numbers have increased. And अब आप चाहते हैं तो आप थोड़ा qualitatively और अंदर जा सकते हैं. What happens is that these 1/3 seats are not fixed. There is rotation in every election. आज सीट A women's के लिए reserved है, लेकिन घर वालों को पता है कि अगले साल तो मेल के लिए हो जाएगी, तो इस साल इसको चुनाव लड़ाओ, अगले साल तो मुझे चुनाव लड़ना है. All right. So this rotation of reservation in terms of seats for women can be looked at. All right. Why not have a fixed reservation? Similarly, you can also talk about, following the example of Bihar, why only 1/3? Why not 50% when women are nearly 50% of the population? And if they are not 50%, it is not their fault. All right. So why not 50% of the reservation? So you can talk about these aspects as well. All right. Okay. And I'm hoping that most of you who have written mains would have written a better answer than this. But then it is not about a perfect answer. It is about what are the basic minimum ingredients of any answer that you should be prepared for. All right. Okay. So if you are satisfied with it, let's move on to the next question. All right. A question, perhaps the simplest of the questions asked in this year UPSC examination. Simplest of the questions. But mind you, this is also a very difficult question because it is going to be very factual. It is going to be very factual. ये आप आंसर कर सकते थे लक्ष्मीकांत से. All right? वैसे क्या वैसा. चैलेंज क्या है? आपसे एक क्वेश्चन पूछा है 250 वर्ड्स के लिए, 250 वर्ड्स. What does it say? The Attorney General is the chief legal advisor and lawyer of the Government of India. Discuss. करिए discuss. क्या discuss करेंगे? This question comes from that part of the syllabus which talks about appointment to various constitutional posts, powers, functions and responsibilities of various constitutional bodies. Constitutional appointment की बात है. क्या बात करेंगे आप? Roles, functions, power has to be prominently there. You can talk about appointment and removal also, but you have to be under the ambit of Article 76. So, Attorney General is chief legal advisor because it is very clear that it tenders advice to the union government, all right, or to the president. He is the lawyer, apart from a legal advisor, a lawyer because he represents the union government whenever there is a litigation in any of the courts, right, mainly in the Supreme Court, but if need be, he can go to courts outside Delhi also, all right. Similarly, he represents the union whenever this opinion of the Supreme Court is sought under Article 143. So that is happening through his office also, right? He is appointed by the president, of course, on the recommendation of the government. So he is a government servant in that sense. But he is not a government servant in the sense that he has any executive powers of his own. He does not have any executive powers of his own. Similarly, he is not a government servant in the sense that he is not barred from private practice. If you are an attorney general, you still can continue with your private practice, barring that you should not take suit in cases wherein the government of India is also a litigant. And similarly, before defending anyone who is charged with, yes, criminal cases, you need to take the permission of the government. तो ये सारी बातें आपको लिखनी है और आपको ये भी लिखना है कि he is basically tenure कुछ भी नहीं है इनका. All right, he serves till the pleasure of the president. But in practice, what happens? There is a practice when government changes, he also has to resign. बेचारा resign नहीं करना चाहता, but he has to resign. All these things you have to mention. Article 76, Lakshmikant is more than enough here, right? Perhaps the simplest of the question. जिसको जितने provisions याद हो गए होंगे, उसने उतना अच्छा इस बात को, इस question को आंसर कर दिया होगा. ठीक है? तो जब ये बात हो गई, तो let's again go back to question number 5. Again a question from Constitution. Yesterday we had discussed secularism. We have become experts on secularism. So whenever there is a question on secularism, always remember there is a theoretical debate. It can very well be discussed academically. All right. Second thing that you must remember while writing answer to the UPSC question, a bureaucrat is not supposed to be, it is not that he is not supposed to be political. Insofar as you are dealing with public issues, you are political. You are not supposed to be partisan. You are supposed to be neutral. And being neutral means present both sides of the picture, or at least be willing to present that side of the picture which you may not like. All right? ये तो बहुत ही सीधा सा क्वेश्चन था. ये बहुत ही सीधा स्टैंडर्ड स्टॉक क्वेश्चन है. The comparison between the secularism as it is practiced in states like France, secularism as it exists in India. So how would you answer? You can start with the conception of secularism, secularism as it is associated with state policy, all right, which is based on the principle of separation of state and religion. That is the primary principle. But in certain senses there are differences. Why? Because in France you will find a system of Laïcite, which is strict separation of religion and state. In terms of its practice, it means that state would not participate in religious activities, religion would not be allowed to influence the state. All right? Okay. And then it also is translated into actual practices such as ban on religious articles, from food to clothing to religious symbols in public institutions. So they go to that particular extent. It has been in news when they banned certain clothing, they banned turbans, they banned kripans, all right, kosher food, halal food, etc. in public offices. So it has been in news. But then you would also find that there is a simmering tension within the French society because increasingly France has also become multicultural. Till you were by and large, in terms of your ethnic composition, by and large, monolithic, it did not make a difference because there was one religion predominantly. So the question of discriminating against other religions did not come up. There were no minorities, so discrimination against minorities, that kind of a question did not come up. So in the past, this particular principle has served France. But in the modern times, as France itself has become a multicultural society by the virtue of immigration, in which they are a bit liberal, it needs to learn from other conceptions of secularism, primarily in India. And yesterday we have talked about it. Yes, in India, secularism is about separation of state and religion, but it is also about equal protection of all religions. It is also about prevention of intra-religious and inter-religious domination. So it keeps the door open for the state to interfere in religious practices if they are violative of the spirit of the constitution. All right, if they are against social justice, right? So that is something that we need to learn. So where would we trace this idea of secularism? It starts with the preamble, the very commitment that we would be a secular republic. All right, then the articulation of secularism through guarantees of rights. Article 25 to Article 28, an individual can profess, preach, practice his own religion. Minority institutions, minority religions have the protection of the constitution insofar as they want to practice their own religion, administer their own educational affairs. So that kind of guarantee has been given in the constitution. But if you go to the DPSP, Directive Principle of State Policy, the non-justice CBL part of the constitution, there is also an expectation that insofar as possible, the state would try to attain a uniform civil code. That idea is also there. And if you go to fundamental duties, you would also find every citizen of India is enjoined with the responsibility that he would act to promote harmony and he would respect others, right? So from preamble to fundamental rights to DPSP to the fundamental duties, there is an extensive expectation of secular practices that has been articulated in the constitution, which remains flexible but also firm in its commitment to create a secular polity. All right, if not society, polity. Society create करना वैसे constitution का काम नहीं है, but polity create करना constitution का काम है. That insofar as possible, constitution would promote a secular polity. So these are certain things that France can learn from India. Flexibility of approach. All right. A multicultural approach, an approach which allows India to deal with diversity, an approach that allows the state the opportunity to interfere in cultural practices to achieve socio-economic goals. All right, and secularism which also then guarantees that the government would secure all the religions if they want its patronage. ऐसा नहीं होगा एक रिलीजन को करेंगे दूसरे को नहीं करेंगे. All right. So minority rights के लिए भी यहाँ पे जगह है. बेसिक बात यह है कि सेकुलरिज्म के समझ को लेके बहुत दिक्कतें हैं. यहाँ पे लोग ये देख लेते हैं कि हज को सब्सिडी मिल रही है, लेकिन लोग ये नहीं देख पाते कि हर गवर्नमेंट बिल्डिंग बनने से पहले भूमि पूजन क्यों होता है. वो कौन सी प्रैक्टिस है. सब अपने अपने तरीके से सेकुलरिज्म को देख लेते हैं, कौन सेकुलर है कौन नहीं. नहीं भैया, सेकुलरिज्म आप यूपीएससी की तैयारी कर रहे हैं, थोड़ा पढ़ लिख के समझे, है ना. ट्वीट्स से ना समझे, है ना. ट्वीट्स एक दूसरे के ट्वीट से नहीं समझे, पढ़े लिखे. और इसमें भी 4 एनसीईआरटीज हैं पॉलिटिकल साइंस की, 11th 12th जरूर पढ़ें. अपनी लक्ष्मीकांत भी पढ़ें और न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ते रहें फॉर commentary, right?